When the flames of Islamic extremism touched the skyscrapers of New York in 2001, the fierce giant onslaught of Pakistan, the US, and her allies and Pashtuns of both sides of the British-drawn Devon line, tearing apart the Pashtun nation in two pieces, is a justifiable solution to global terrorism driving its roots from the forceful establishment of the Islamic Sharia law is what the Western, American, and Pakistani eyes sees. Islamic extremism causing the global terrorism had never been indigenous to Pashtuns until the US, Pakistan, and their Western allies started to infiltrate in Afghanistan in the 70s, exploiting Islam in its full wing to overcome the modern social democratic Pashtun dominant government in Kabul backed by the USSR. Islamic extremism causing global terrorism has never been a Pashtun-centered phenomenon, nor it started invented by Pashtuns and themselves for achieving some ideological, material, political, and economic objectives, but it's heavily a Western American imposed, exogenous, and externally stimulated ideology-driven phenomenon playing havoc with the Pashtun way of life and culture. But very unfortunately, the West will deny this fact. The West has forgotten that seeds of Islamic extremism had been sowed by the US, Western allies, the Arabs in Pakistan, by establishing, funding, and controlling 70,000 Islamist institutions, madrasas, in Pashtun-dominated territories of both sides of the Devon line, especially the current Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and recruiting, training, and arming the Pashtun innocent children who were sent by their parents for Islamic education. Islam has never been so much a dominant ideology in Pashtuns before the US, Western allies, and Pakistani interference in Afghanistan, and it would have never resulted in such a bloodshed, killing, war, and terrorism if the US, Western allies, the Arabs, and Pakistan had not pumped it against the then Afghan Shore Revolution in 1978. The 70,000 Islamic schools which were established and funded by the US, Western allies, the Arabs, and Pakistan are now the formal terrorist breeding farms. And it has now resulted in a very profitable industry for Pakistan to produce and sell an army of suicide bombers to the whole Islamic and non-Islamic world for the achievement of their political and economic objectives or subjugation of nations and countries, while the Pashtun sun is used for the greedy materialist and opportunist desires of Pakistan, the Arabs, and of course their Western fellows. Now, when the same series of terrorism that they sowed and grown under their very immediate monitoring and observation for their war against the USSR have hacked them back in the heart and inflamed the cities of the US, Western allies in Pakistan, why they are so hypocritically terming this as a Pashtun-centered phenomenon and bombarding the Pashtun villages with heavy artillery firing, jet planes, and drones. Why they are not cutting the throat of terrorism by stopping the funds that flow in the veins of their very own established 70,000 Islamic schools, continuing to inculcate and institute hateful jihadi ideologies in the nascent minds of the Pashtun children, becoming suicide bombers, and finally, war materials or cannon fodder for the Islamic expansionist dreams of Pakistan and few Arabic monsters. Why they are not condemning Pakistan as a fake nation governed by few Mughal hybrid Punjabi families under the influence of Arabs occupying the lands of Sindhis, Balochs, and Pashtuns, and setting up terror industry in the land of Pashtuns where Pashtun sons are ultimately consumed is labor in this terror industry by seducing them into Jannah, paradise, and comfortable life with 72 virgins after death. Stop bombarding the Pashtun villages, stop harassment of the Afghans in Pakhtunkhwa in Pakistan. Now comes to the so-called terrorist capital, Waziristan, my homeland. After 9/11, US came to Afghanistan with the help of Pakistan. When none of the 9/11 attackers was Pashtun, and the mastermind of the attacks were later found in Pakistan Military Academy. But why the US and Pakistan started bombarding Waziristan? Because they needed a place where they can groom, where they can breed international terrorists for their global imperialist agenda. The US and Western allies, the petrodollar armed economies in Pakistan, very skillfully and tactically portrayed and depicted Pashtuns as terrorists, and vacated the Pashtun population from Waziristan in millions, and killed them in thousands and even in hundreds of thousands. The US, Western allies, the petrodollar Arab economies in Pakistan established international jihadi companies, the terrorist breeding farms, and terrorist factories in Waziristan, where they groom international terrorists, train them, arm them, and whenever they need a regime to collapse anywhere in the world which is not in their favor, they bring these so-called moderate or extremist rebels to that country and use them as local rebels against the legitimate regime. And you can see that in Syria today. So this is how Waziristan was made intentionally and deliberately the so-called global terrorist capital of the world by the Western powers, the petrodollar Arab economies in Pakistan for their global imperialist goals.